And we're back. You're still watching Citizen TV. This is the Power Breakfast News Review with me, Fred Indimuli. I'm still in studio with Senator Isaac Mwaura, Senator Ledamo Lekino from Narok County, MP Ugunja Opio Andai, MP Laikipia West Patrick Mariro, and the woman representative Vihiga County Beatrice Adagala. Just before the break, of course, we were discussing this issue of IEBC's plan on how to conduct the rerun, the presidential, fresh presidential poll of October 26th, and the disagreements thereof from both Jubilee and NASA. NASA insists they're going to the streets today to kick off some members of staff of the IEBC. We will revisit that at the end of this so that you can get a proper plan. NASA can tell us what kind of attire we'll need later so that if at all we'll be going to town. But before that, let's look at the big headline on the Standard. Jubilee's radical plan to shake IEBC, Supreme Court. Party plans to trim Commission Chairman's powers and tame Supreme Court by introducing requirement of 2/3 rule for key decisions by both institutions. These and other proposals are to be in today's parliamentary group talks. That's on page 6. And some of the things that they say, and these are from interviews from some of the MPs, they include having presiding officers take results to constituency tallying centers for verification and electronic transmission only after tabulation in Form 34B. Now this will form part of the agenda of a raft of amendments to electoral laws that target the Electoral Commission and the Supreme Court. Now these laws, they hope, will have changed by the time we go for the rerun on October 26th. Another target is changes to ensure that the decisions by the IEBC and the Supreme Court are passed by 2/3 majority, meaning that in the case of the Supreme Court, where we do have 7 judges, then 5 have to be in the majority for it to pass. That is another amendment they hope to have. Another proposal targets the powers and qualifications of the IEBC leadership, so that any other member of the Commission can take up the role of the chairperson in his absence. The other one, changes to make it mandatory that any decision made by the Commission is supported by 2/3 of the 7 commissioners, and just like in the case of the Supreme Court, that means 5 of the 7 have to be in agreement for it to pass. The legislators say they will also seek to reintroduce the Green Book in the voting process, so that the Kenya Integrated Election Management System, KIMS, is only used for identification but not for validation of the process. This is a plan by Jubilee, and this are some of the proposals that will be discussed at a parliamentary group meeting today, at least according to the Standard. I need that confirmation. Senator Isaac Mwaura, is this it?
Yeah, I think there are many proposals that have been put forward. They have to crystallize into legislative proposals in terms of the actual drafting of the law. And these are ideas. If you look at that story, I'm also one of the people who have put it. But the issue we are trying to do is to forestall a situation where we plunge this country into a crisis. I think that is where we would... I don't think any Kenyan would want that, either you are from whichever side of the political divide. And we would want to have a situation, if you remember, Fred, from the submissions at the Supreme Court, there were issues around the ambiguity of Section 83 of the Elections Act. And in fact, I remember that the judges said that the word "or" couldn't have a far better meaning or greater meaning at that point in time. So those ambiguities around the Section 83, Section 39, Section 44A, and any other provisions of the law really need to be, relooked at with a view of tightening, tightening the loopholes. For example, the issue of the complementary, mechanism of transmission. Really, there was a very good argument by Joki Ndongo about, being right-centric or form-centric. What is the most important thing? It's a vote, it's a ballot. And so some of those things we are going to look at, because obviously there is no, perfect process. I don't think there is perfect technology. Technology may not and we would never replace human beings. And the purview and the role of making laws, Fred, is within the Parliament in terms of the spirit of separation of powers. So that is what we are going to look at. And I believe, and I would want to invite Kenyans to objectively look at these provisions and even submit further proposals that would ensure that we do not end up in a situation where we are finding ourselves into.
Beatrice Odagala, you remember the National Assembly. You are part of those people who will be called upon to actually relook at these laws as proposed by Jubilee. Of course, Jubilee is speaking from the platform of them understanding their numbers within the National Assembly and the Senate. They feel that once they make that decision at their parliamentary group meeting, it's as good as done. Are you in agreement with some of these proposals, or do you think that Jubilee is simply just something?
I'll not agree with that, because some of the amendments have to be made by the supermajority, which I know they may have the numbers, yes, but they may not meet the necessary supermajority that is required. So to say that they're going to amend everything because of their numbers, that is not the right way of doing things. And constitutionally, I think Jubilee, they are trying to just behave in a manner like wanting to impose most of the things they want on us.
And more importantly, Fred,
yes,
it must also be made very clear that we are totally opposed to these so-called amendment proposals coming from the Jubilee side. And why? One is the timing. You cannot be rushing to do amendments to very critical electoral laws about 3 to 4 weeks to a very serious election. But more importantly, I know Jubilee could be misguided in believing that because they have some numbers in the National Assembly and the Senate, they can push through any form of legislative proposal. But let me say this: the upshot of these so-called amendment proposals is essentially to reverse the reforms that were achieved through a bipartisan process. Remember the Kiraitu Murungi James Orengo Joint Select Committee that did a lot of good work and ended up helping us navigate through a very serious crisis. Jubilee was never happy from day one about this process, and now it has come to pass that they actually want to take measures to reverse all those gains. Thirdly, the election process is so critical that no one particular side can be allowed to tinker with the rules or the laws simply to find a mechanism of suiting its interest to the exclusion of the rest of the other parties. So anybody trying to initiate such a process in Parliament at this particular time is basically going to create a lot of problems, not only for themselves but for the whole country. Yes, it may pass in Parliament, but ultimately the people will reject.
Yes, Fred. You know, we must see these proposals and changes within a context. Now, the NASA team did go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court addressed itself on a number of issues. But more fundamentally, the Supreme Court were clear that there were certain systematic challenges that needed to be addressed that arose from the last election. Now, in fact, I don't think these changes should be called the Jubilee changes. This is a point where a country should come together and ask ourselves, what are those changes that need to happen within our electoral framework, so that then we don't face the same challenges we faced in the last election.
But let's be honest and say that these ones are being discussed at the Jubilee Parliamentary Group meeting. It is not a consultative forum where it includes the other side. You know, so it is a Jubilee plan.
The Jubilee is initiating it, but you know, when these changes come to Parliament, the members of Parliament from both sides would have to look at those changes more critically. And that's why I'm inviting NASA, instead of them just trashing them, even before seeing the concrete proposals. You know, they are just saying from ab initio, we are not going to accept those changes. Which changes? Let me ask you. Now, there was this famous minor KI case that was quoted, and I think that case was even supported by NASA at the High Court. They were very clear that at the centrality of the vote at the polling station and at the tallying center. Now, there were certain proposals that the law had said that the transmission would be electronic, but there would be complementary alternatives. What is this complementary? That's what we are asking ourselves. What is so bad about that? I think NASA and Jubilee should sit and ask ourselves, so that we get credible elections on 26, we should think about this complementary alternative that is proposed by a law and say, and we want to propose, let it be clear, it is manual. I mean, if it is electronic, the alternative is manual. Let us not be ambiguous.
So the plan is to seek clarity and
seek
get rid
clarity.
of ambiguity.
There is nothing partisan about these changes. In fact, let me finish. In fact, when these changes are made public, you will be surprised that even NASA may actually say, actually we need these changes, so that we can be clear about, like the last one. What is so partisan in asking ourselves who should be or who ought to be or what provision of law allow the chairmanship of IEBC? What is so partisan about that?
Okay, Senator Olekina, is that how you see it?
No, actually, and I'm very, very happy that we have a living document, a constitution, which evidently we will have to revert back to it. You know, last year, I think it was last year, there were certain really drastic amendments which were made to the security laws, and they were reversed. You know, the president assigned to them, but our courts, we've got a brilliant check and balance system in this country, and I think it is wrong for Jubilee to actually think that they will be in power forever. You know, we've got any decision we make in this country, we've got to think about the future. You know, people can learn a lot from their mistakes if they are not so busy denying them. The more we deny our mistakes, the difficulty it is for us to be able to learn from them. So I think in this particular time, we should not be talking about using our numbers, because I'm there to defend the Constitution. Article 3 gives me that right to defend that Constitution. And if Jubilee comes in and introduces these drastic measures, we will go to court and fight them. You know, and you know, ultimately, what the Constitution says is what will be able to prevail. So in my view, right now, instead of us talking about drastic changes in the Supreme Court, drastic changes in the IEBC, let us think about the way forward. Are we going to hold an election on the 26th? Are we going to meet the demand set out by NASA?
Yes.
Are we going to, even Jubilee, they're good for them to have demands. Yes. Because in mediation, you bring in your demands, I bring in my demands, we put them together, and then we resolve. I want Jubilee, and even NASA, for us to remember that this country is looking up to us. People right now are crying. Our economy is going down. Factories are being closed. So let us stop this sensationalization. Let us stop this emotive where we must come up with these changes. Right now, it is about time that we pull up our socks and we move forward to be able to have a country for this, for the future generation.
Senator Isaac Mwaura, of course, it will be seen, and even public perception is also very important. Some people may say and will say that all these changes are simply because that Supreme Court judgment did not go the Jubilee way. That's why they're seeking to even change how the Supreme Court works. Don't you think that that's a negative to Jubilee?
Not really, because I don't think there's a way we can say, for example, that the Supreme Court ruling is really something that is beyond reproach.
But does it necessitate changing how the Supreme Court works?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, because it is a negation of the very will of the people. And you don't want to have a situation where you predicate the future of this country on some individuals who can be compromised. And what I want to say is that if you look at the proposals we are making, they are not just emanating from the fact that it is Jubilee that has said. I think it is both the majority and minority in the Supreme Court. They say there are issues of ambiguity in the law. And when you have misinterpretation of the law, the best thing is to make it clear. So in terms of negativity, personally I think it's a question of difference of approach. There are those who want to go and demonstrate. There are those who want to go and eject innocent Kenyans out of their offices. And I think there are also those who want to use Parliament to ensure that we make the laws in the right way, because Parliament is the one that makes the laws. And Fred, you know, last week we were somewhere and somebody was inviting us to chaos by telling us that we should interpret the quorum of Parliament as to mean that the other side is there. That is to paralyze Parliament. Our colleagues from the other side of the political divide have recused themselves from Parliament. They don't attend. They appear technically and then they leave. So when we talk about discussing this issue on the floor of the House, really, who is abdicating their role? Who is earning their salary without doing their job?
Is that why you're going the parliamentary group way in discussing such changes?
If you look,
would have worked better for this.
Yeah, because Parliament in Article 95 and 96 has a role to make laws, and if you look at even if it were to be about the constitutional changes, we have three options in Article 255, 256 particularly, and 257. And these are some of the things that Parliament really, it falls within the purview of Parliament. So, Fred, there are no ideas that we can say these are the set of it. We are exploring these options.
Okay.
And so we are welcoming everybody to ensure that we have laws that guarantee an election. Listen to me, Fred, what I'm trying to say. An election that if you know you are going to lose, you don't bangle because you know you are going to lose. An election where if you know you don't have the numbers, you don't say you are not going to participate in that same election because you know you are going to be defeated.
And but again, you need to look at all this in proper context. You'll recall when the Supreme Court did make its judgment that none other than Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta came out and actually vowed to have the Supreme Court fixed at some point. Now, what we are starting to see happening in the Jubilee parliamentary group is the fixing. And let me also say this: if it was possible, Jubilee would have actually wanted to amend the constitution, but because they do not have the numbers that can enable them to amend the constitution on their own, they are looking for other ways. In fact, they want to attempt to amend the constitution through the back door by tinkering with the statutes. What we are saying is that they may happen. They may succeed in changing the laws in Parliament, but they will not be able to change the constitution. And if that is the case, just like my friend the senator of Narok has said, we shall go back to the same court to look at the constitutionality of those legislation.
Yes, some of these changes proposed, if at all they will be discussed, and if at all there will be an attempt to change, for example, how the Supreme Court operates, for example, how the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission operates. These are some of the things that need to be discussed beyond a political party. The Constitution was not discussed based on KANU or DP or ODM at that time. It is an affair for the whole country. How come Jubilee as one party can go to its own parliamentary group meeting to discuss such serious changes? Or is it just simple proposals from probably members of the National Assembly or the Senate who do not really understand what it means to change something?
Well, I think the legislative proposals have to be initiated somewhere. And someone has to take leadership and ask themselves, do we want to face 26th of October with certain ambiguities and certainties in our legal electoral framework? And so what Jubilee is doing is to take leadership. And I think what I would like to invite NASA, especially members of Parliament. They have been boycotting Parliament. I'm sure they will come probably from this week. So that then in Parliament, when the legislative proposals are out, we can actually discuss. I want to give an example so that then it is clear even to Kenyans. What are these changes? Why would we have 7 Supreme Court judges? Why would one oppose a proposal where the law is made even more clearer that out of the 7, how many should be one side and how many should be dissenting? What is so unconstitutional? What is so partisan about that? What is it? What is so partisan that NASA is opposing by saying when the transmission, the electronic transmission of results fail, we must go manual? I mean, that is just removing the ambiguity. I heard someone saying that Germany, they have learned elections from a manual platform. We are not saying we go manual completely. We are just saying if electronic transmission fails, let's go manual. Let's not be ambiguous.
And some of the proposals are workable, but some of them appear a bit over the top, especially changing how the Supreme Court works. It is already clear and it's already defined. The quorum within a Supreme Court, as long as the 5 judges are on the bench, then they can go ahead and adjudicate on a matter. Now to change and say it has to be 2/3 majority, don't you think that's changing a lot?
No, I mean, you know, Supreme Court actually, last time, they made a decision that was so fundamental and has pushed the country to where we are today. I mean, it's just making sure that we have clarity on how many judges at any one time should make. And you know, next time it is probably Jubilee that will go to court. Next time it is Mario who will go to court. Next time it is my friend Wadai who will go to court. We are not registering for Jubilee. We are registering for this country. Okay. And so we are registering more looking forward. And you know, the 26th of October, we are facing 26th of October. All we are trying to do is to make sure it is clear. The mirror is clear ahead. Where there are gaps, which Supreme Court, thank God, helped us see certain changes, certain gaps. We fill those gaps before 26th of October.
Adagala, let's give a chance to Beatrice Adagala. You remember the National Assembly, these proposals, if at all they come through, they'll have to pass through the House. There's a risk, because now you've been accused, the minority side has been accused of not being present in Parliament.
Yes.
Yet you have the responsibility of checking the majority side. If at all the majority side, and I'm talking about Jubilee, goes ahead and makes these proposals, gets them through Parliament, through their numbers, without your participation, we will blame you as well. Don't you think that you should be part of this, just to check exactly what Jubilee is doing in the House? There's no other way.
Fred, that's actually our obligation as the minority to check on Jubilee. But the question here is, why these amendments at this particular time when we are facing an election? Will you be able to check
on Jubilee while you're not attending the parliamentary sessions?
That one shows that the sessions are going on illegally. So they have to wait for the elections we finish the elections, president is elected, and then we can have the necessary sitting.
So you still maintain that the sessions up until October 26th are going on illegally, and so you will not attend them?
We have to wait for the election.
Let me just come in a little bit and respond to what my dear brother from Laikipia West actually alluded to. Number one, let me suggest to you, and in Masai we say, let me lie to you, but it doesn't really mean that I'm lying to you, but I'm actually just telling you. We learn through other democracies. When you look at certain decisions which were made in the United States of America, I think one case which is very important is Roe versus Wade. It's a case that dealt with the issue of abortion. That time, a lot of people did not agree with that decision, but they did not go and say, we are now going to control the judiciary, the Supreme Court, so that they do not come up with that decision again. It has to wait until maybe other Supreme Courts which will come in the future can be able to reverse. So my suggestion to Jubilee is this: let us accept and move on, because unless you accept your responsibilities and your failures, you will never develop. So in this case, let us not try to circumvent the will of the people. Let us not try to destroy the Constitution. What we ought to be doing now is not running around and saying we want to bring in these radical changes, because I know there are so many members of Parliament in the 11th Parliament who wanted the Senate to be scrapped. But finally, today, they are actually part of the Senate. So today what you want because of emotives, because you feel aggrieved, may not be what is going to be good for you. So instead of us talking about making amendments to the Constitution at this time, making amendments or controlling certain institutions which have their powers from the Constitution, let us now talk about how are we going to hold this election? How are we going to take responsibility? What are we going to learn from our failures? Because IEBC failed us. We failed. As a nation, we failed. And it behooves us to accept and move on. So let us go, prepare, hold this election whereby we can be able to guarantee the future of this economy.
Okay. Senator Mwaura, of course, as Senator Olekina says, some of these proposals are purely clouded in emotions. You feel aggrieved by the Supreme Court, you want to fix them, or you want to do something immediately, simply because you're angry. Don't you think that some of these proposals, because they are quite serious, should wait until we are done with this electioneering process? Then we can actually take a look, go back and take a look at some of these institutions?
I think we cannot criminalize being emotional or angry. That is normal. I mean, human beings are emotional, they're angry,
So you do agree that some of these plans are being made out of pure emotion?
We are separating those two. So there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, in politics, you are taught that the art of political communication, you must appeal to emotions. I think because of the fact that we are going into an election, we, Fred, cannot say that we will not look at what has been glaringly said to be the problem. And what I am saying is this: you can have a law that is ostensibly good to help the country move forward, but actually moves us backward. We are where we are because of minor KI case. We are where we are because people seem to misunderstand that actually our process is manual. Our election process is manual. It's not electronic. The electronic aspect is largely around voter identification and transmission. And even when you see a situation where we are where we are because of such electronic provisions of electronic processes, we need to tighten them up, and that's okay. It is also not true to say that we are trying to countermand the Constitution, because the Constitution is framed in such a manner that, Fred, you have the general provision of the law, and then you have the enabling legislation. The enabling legislation is within the powers of the legislative body, in this case the Senate and the National Assembly. So basically it's just a question of clarity. The wisdom of Parliament is what was relied upon as to make the laws that we are now questioning. And you know, laws are never cast in stone. I mean, it's out of this experience, Fred, that we would want to strengthen them.
It is just the process that we are questioning and the timing. Yes,
no, not really.
Laws have to be amended, and laws have to conform with society as well and the needs of society at this time. But do you think that is what we need right now, that we need to change how the Supreme Court works, how the IEBC works right
I think some of the best constitutions in the world are made during war. So you cannot say that there is a better time to make a constitution, to make laws, or even to amend them. When you look at even the origins of any law, it's from our own practices. I mean, in 2008, we went into a national accord that amended the Constitution because of the circumstances that we found ourselves in. If today, for example, there was any bipartisan agreement across the political divide, it would still have to be done within the same environment. So I think let us not try to argue about the processes and what have you. The issue is, can we see the text of what is being proposed? As we speak right now, we have proposals. But we must all agree, and I'm going back to my earlier point, we must all agree, Fred, that we will not have a situation where laws are used to bangle an election. Laws are used to precipitate a constitutional crisis as to benefit certain political persuasions. That is where we tend to differ.
Okay.
We should have a situation where, and I strongly believe, Fred, that the last election was the most free, fair, and credible.
So
it was the most free, fair, and credible.
Yes.
What we are seeing, and you know, people come here and say they are the ones who are
the Supreme Court. Let's be fair. The Supreme Court has already adjudicated.
No, the Supreme Court. Can I finish my point before Opio, who is now specializing in conclusions, come? The Supreme Court had got 3 rulings: the majority and 2 minority. So it depends on where you are reading. For me, I'm reading the Ojuang and the Jokindongo, which I fully agree. So what we are saying is this, Fred. What we are saying, Fred, is this: that we should have a situation where, if a Kenyan has got any legislative proposal, the best forum for that is Parliament. And so we are inviting our colleagues to come and debate these proposals. But to say, even before you read them, that you reject them in totality, I think that is stonewalling. I think that is not in good faith. I think that is extending political constitution too far. We must be able, as legislators, paid by the taxpayer, to sit down and see whatever proposals Kenyans have. And I would want to imagine that these proposals also resonate with people across the political divide. Okay. We must not use them as a means for political contestation.
That's a big headline on the Standard today: Jubilee's radical plan to shake IEBC and the Supreme Court. And the party is planning to trim commissions, chairman's powers, as well as tame Supreme Court by introducing requirement of 2/3 rule for key decisions by both institutions. Now, these are still proposals. They are to be discussed in today's parliamentary group meeting, and that's a Jubilee parliamentary group meeting. The story is on page 6 of the Standard. You can go read and understand it. Now, today is Tuesday 26th of September, exactly 30 days to the date of the election. Today also a deadline by NASA for some of the IEBC staff members to quit, including CEO of the Secretariat Ezra Chiloba, expired yesterday. So today we do expect NASA will go ahead, and according to the headlines, they say yes, they will go ahead with their protests to try and push out these individuals from the IEBC. Looking at page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation and page 8 and 9 of the same, those stories are also on Citizen TV. There are two headlines. One is Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, warning NASA against chaos in the demos. The other one, NASA vowing to go on with the protest. Opposition accuses IEBC of failing to adequately address their concerns raised as irreducible minimum. On the Daily Nation, Raila climbs down on storming IEBC. NASA leaders maintained yesterday that their demonstration against electoral officials would proceed as planned today, but said they would not storm the electoral agency to force them out. We do have a member of NASA, Opio Ondai. What exactly do we expect today?
Yeah, Fred, I'll explain, and I would really wish that you give me time. Firstly, we are definitely going to carry out massive demonstrations beginning today. We are not saying those demonstrations will end today, but we are kicking them off today. And the main thrust of our demonstrations is to ensure that ultimately those officials of the IBC who are found to have bungled the August 8th elections go home and give room for a new team to carry out the repeat elections. We have also gone ahead and notified the police to provide adequate security to the demonstrators when they'll be exercising their democratic and constitutional right to demonstrate. You must also recall, Fred, that in the past we have carried out very, very peaceful demonstrations. Those demonstrations have only turned violent sometimes whenever the police have violently attempted to disrupt them. So we are appealing to the police to carry out their mandate as dictated by the Constitution, to protect the right of every citizen to demonstrate, and also protect those citizens who will be going about their usual businesses. It must also be understood that by notifying the police of our intended demonstrations, we are not seeking permission from them. We don't need permission from the police to carry out demonstrations. That is a constitutional right which is inalienable. And the police must understand this. They should need to shed off the colonial or one-party hang that the police had some authority to authorize demonstrations or to cancel them. That is not their mandate. But more importantly, and this has been made very clearly, our intention is not to storm any offices, to flush out any officials of any organization. No. Our demonstrations are meant to appeal to the conscience of these officers who are clearly capable to give way. And more importantly, I must state that these demonstrations are not going to end today. They will continue for as long as our demands have not been met.
More clarity, Bonopio and I, before I give Bonapatrick Mario an opportunity. Are these demonstrations only happening in Nairobi? Are they going to be domiciled around Anniversary Towers, which houses the IBC headquarters, or are we going to see street marches across city streets? What exactly?
We have said that these demonstrations are going to happen everywhere. Okay?
So in other
but of course the focus will be in Nairobi, because that's where the IBC sits. It's going to be in Nairobi, and it's going to be on the streets, and it's going to be everywhere. And we have advised the police beforehand how we are going to carry out these demonstrations. So they need to move with speed.
We will expect movement of protesters from one place to another?
Of course, when people demonstrate, they move. Yeah, they will move, they will decide to sit, they will decide to dance, they will decide to jump up and down. Yes.
Changing location because you remember the last demonstration, street protest that we had when they pushed to remove Isaac Hassan and his team. That kind of demonstration was domiciled around University Way, next to Anniversary Towers. Now you're saying we're going to see a march from one place to another, probably from Uhuru Park to Harambee Avenue to University Way.
You know, Fred, I will not be able to divulge our detailed strategy here on the national television. But the most important thing is that Kenyans have been called upon by ourselves to turn up in their large numbers and participate in this very noble demonstration, and the police will be there to provide security.
Okay.
Good,
yes.
good. Yes, I think Honorable Daiwa has taken quite a bit of time to actually...
we needed that explanation.
Yes, that's good to help Kenyans understand what they're saying. But we have a common meeting, we have a point of convergence between NASA and Jubilee, and that is the Supreme Court ruling. But the NASA has taken a tangent of demonstrations to address the issues that were raised by the Supreme Court. It has taken a tangent on staff that weren't sacked. It has taken a tangent on ultimatum. I am surprised they had ultimatums up to yesterday. Staff should have left. That is the point they have taken. Jubilee, from that point of convergence, has taken the point of looking at the ecosystem, the electoral ecosystem, and decided, instead of demonstrations, instead of having a certain junior staff sacked, we are going to look at our laws and see these ambiguities that were raised by the Supreme Court. How do we address them facing 26th of October? Now, NASA, I think they have a right to demonstrate. The Senator earlier said, and I think Mona Bordai said, that the President did demonize demonstrations yesterday. He didn't. It was very clear. He said everyone has a right to protest and to demonstrate, but when you touch that mama boga on the side, then there is a government in place. This is not a vacuum. I mean, we must protect those who want to go to their business, to their work, to work. The motor vehicles that are moving, that must be protected. Last time there were demonstrations in Nairobi. Literally, there was a gridlock. People who wanted to work couldn't go to work. People who had their business couldn't go. In fact, there were incidences, many incidences of people stopping into shops. I mean, this country is, we can't allow anarchy. Let the demonstrations happen peacefully, and let other people's lives move on. Let us not mix the two. But I would like to invite NASA people, the members of Parliament especially, this week and next week, and moving forward. Please let us shift the discourse from the streets to Parliament. I would like to appeal to them.
Well, the plan by them is the streets for this time.
Yeah,
but before I come to you, Senator, yes. A quick one, Beatrice Adagala, because I think you've been quiet for a while. This issue of demonstrations, however peacefully planned, turning chaotic is real. Last time we saw the demonstrations which ended up in people getting hurt, and even reports of some people dying, although they were not confirmed. But surely, how can we expect this time round to be different? What different thing or different measure has been put in place to ensure that this time round it does not get chaotic?
These demonstrations that are going to be on today, we are requesting the police to give the demonstrators security, because people are not going to demonstrate to be violent. We are calling upon the police to give us security as we demonstrate around the IBC offices and the larger town of Nairobi. We are requesting for that, because mostly we shall have youth, women, men doing that demonstration. So we want peace.
Yes.
Okay. We want security.
Fred, go ahead.
We want the police to take care of us in the streets as we demonstrate, because that's our democratic right. They should not wait. When Jubilee they are demonstrating, police are there to guard them. When NASA we are demonstrating, no police. So we want the police to be there for us.
So the main guarantee that no chaos will happen has to come from
I don't think
police.
there are going to be chaos.
If there is any chaos, Fred, it only comes from the police.
The police.
Yes.
Okay, Senator Olekin.
But I think it's important for us as Kenyans to look back as to what happened in this country in 2007. You'll allow me to divert a little bit because my colleagues have spoken about all our positions. NASA, we've stated that we are going to the streets. We are going to appeal to these individuals to step aside, to allow justice to prevail. Jubilee has stated their position that they are going to amend laws so that it can fit into their interest. These two positions, to me, are actually very dangerous. And from what I'm seeing happening, and I have to speak about this because 2 days ago, in my county of Narok, about 10 individuals were killed. And if we do not stop this happened in the border in Transmara district where there were disputes about land issues. You know, these things will grow because one person was killed from one community, that community retaliated. I want us to remember, and in fact, the security has got to be neutral, because when you see a situation like what happened in Narok, where the police in that whole boundary were from one ethnic group, the other community will feel aggrieved. So I think it is a high time that we sit down. I repeat this, let Uhuru Kenyatta, let Raila Odinga come and sit together with Chebukati, let's mediate on these things and let's have a way forward.
So we are putting our demand. Support the street protest, do you?
I do support the street protest. It is actually every single person has a right to picket and demonstrate. All I'm saying is that I have asked our party, and in fact my colleagues are here, that we are going to be peaceful. We are going to carry out the demonstration as they are provided and protected by the Constitution and the laws. Now, I want to appeal to Jubilee that the course they are trying to take to going into amending laws, it will look very, very bad for them. And the best thing for us to do is now to think of a way forward. We have 30 days to be able to hold an election. If we do not hold an election within 60 days as stipulated by the Constitution, I think Article 140, then we are going to be facing a crisis that is not even envisioned by the Constitution. So right now, it is a high time that we think about our economy, which is suffering, we think about our counties, which are going down, and we think about the future of this nation. So it behooves us as leaders to set our own personal interest aside and to think about the future of this country.
Senator Isaac Mwaura, it's time for us to wrap up our news review this morning. I'll give you the first opportunity to make your final submissions, and you must agree with your colleague that yes, we need to move on from this grandstanding as well.
I think the Jubilee supporters feel very aggrieved. They feel like they are really under siege, and they have been very patient, the silent majority. They have been dehumanized. They are being told as if they are not the people of this country. When they demonstrate, they are told they are demonstrating against their own government, which is not true, because Jubilee has got its supporters and there is a government in place. So I think when you are pushed to the corner, Fred, you also have to respond. And that is why you are seeing, people in Kiambu, from where I come from, in Ruiru, in Githurai, where I had run for a parliamentary seat, coming out in numbers. And I support them fully. It's because, you see, there is a way in which these threats are becoming too much. And there are many ways to address a problem. I think the best way is to use the legal means, and that is why we are going to Parliament with the proposals that are coming from Kenyans who, have voted the Jubilee leaders.
Before we move on there, yes, you mentioned something that, yes, Jubilee supporters are feeling aggrieved. We have had your colleagues from Jubilee actually say they will be going to the streets to counter the protests by NASA. Do you agree with that kind of plan?
Fully. I agree with it because, honestly, Fred, we have been pushed to a corner. So you
believe a major confrontation in the streets of Nairobi between Jubilee and NASA politicians
hardly
supporters will actually be beneficial?
Hardly is there a situation where protests are peaceful, by the way. Most of the time they end up being violent because it's about people,
And you're looking forward to...
But the point I'm trying to make... No, don't fix me. Don't say things that you want me to fix. You must also remain neutral, Fred.
No. I've asked you a simple question.
Yes,
do you think Jubilee supporters going to confront NASA demonstrators is actually the right way to go?
Are you trying to say that the NASA supporters...
It is a simple question.
Are you trying to say that the NASA supporters are more right to demonstrate Fred, than the Jubilee supporters. That when the Jubilee supporters say they are going to counter with their own demonstration, it is an illegality. The truth is, the Constitution has given both Jubilee and NASA a right, or any Kenyan.
Let's be clear here. Let's be clear.
But you're not allowing me to make my point.
Senator, let's be clear. There's Jubilee supporters demonstrating, carrying out their own demonstration, and NASA supporters carrying out their own demonstration. Yet we've had some leaders saying that Jubilee supporters will come confront NASA supporters. That is what I'm asking you.
I don't think
separate demonstrations.
I don't think, Fred, that Jubilee leaders have said they are going to confront. They have said they are going to counter and to protect their property and their businesses. And I think that is in order. And you cannot say that one group has the right to demonstrate and the other group does not have the right to also demonstrate to defend their property. I think that is where you go wrong. Because what you do is that you ensure that the police are in charge. The other people have a right to voice their concerns. The other people have a right to voice their concerns. And then the country moves forward. But you cannot say that because some people say they are going to demonstrate, if others later on come and say they are going to demonstrate, that is wrong. And we know very well that when some people are demonstrating, they rummage, they break into shops, they burn people's kiosks.
Okay.
You know, so it's not, we are not trying to discuss things in a vacuum. And finally, I think I want to say this as Kenyans, that this country, it's true, it can actually sink lower. I mean, Kenya is seen as a big brother in this region. Let us not fail to imagine that this country can go lower than the way it is. And I don't think there is any ambition of any single individual that is bigger than this country. So even as we do all this, even as we try to size up each other, let us try to maintain that this country must move forward for the benefit of ourselves and the future. I don't think anyone here would want to be a refugee in another different country. How would they survive?
I mean, that is where we're heading.
That is what I would want to insist, and I would want to call upon our NASA colleagues not to precipitate this country to a crisis.
Fred, I think Jubilee.
I'm giving each of you an opportunity to make your final submissions.
Okay.
Let's go to Bwana Opio Ndai first, and we'll come back to you, Senator Olekina, as well.
Well, Fred, as I conclude, it would be very unfortunate for the Jubilee to insist that they be allowed to counter NASA's demonstrations. If the police does that, then you will have sown seed for anarchy. But again, if the police allows the Jubilee fellas to counter NASA's demonstration, we welcome them. At the end of the day, let's see how it goes. But
is that a threat?
But no, not threat really. Because as I've said, it's the duty of the police to provide protection to people who are demonstrating. And so if they go ahead and allow other people to come and disrupt our demonstrations, then we shall see where the blame lies. But more importantly, Fred, this country needs to move forward. But it only move forward if this feeling of entitlement is dealt with. Because I've heard my colleague here talking about Jubilee supporters coming to protect their businesses. Who says that businesses are only owned by Jubilee supporters? Who doesn't know that NASA supporters also own businesses in this city? So that kind of entitlement must really come to an end. But finally, very, very finally, I want to also insist that the kind of proposals which we are currently treating as rumors emanating from the Jubilee side, the kind of legislative proposals which are coming from the Jubilee side, if they eventually come to the floor of the House, will be something which is very unfortunate. And some of the issues they are attempting to address are issues which will call for even a referendum.
Okay.
Like in terms of addressing how the Supreme Court operates. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana Opio Ndai. Before we come to Bwana Patrick Mariro, Beatrice Adagala?
Yes.
Your final submissions.
I'll say this for the Jubilee supporters, the way Senator Maura says that they will protect their businesses. I tend to think that is not right, because last time we saw Jubilee demonstrate, the other day and even yesterday, they have in mind that also NASA supporters have businesses. Yes. So this question of saying protecting every one of us we have businesses in this town, in this country. Therefore, we want demonstrations that are peaceful, also the police protecting us as we move, as we demonstrate in towns, so that we protect all our businesses are protected. Let us not have the notion that is only Jubilee supporters that have businesses. Yeah. We all have businesses. We are mothers. As women, we want to see peaceful demonstrations because our children are there. Expectant women are there. The women living with disabilities are there. Therefore, these people all need protection from this kind of, let's say, from anything. We need that kind of protection. So, Senator Mwaura, we are all, Kenya belongs to all of us. We just need the necessary things to be done for us to have the peaceful elections that we are going to have on 26th. Nothing less than that.
Thank you so much, Beatrice Adagela. Bwana Patrick Mariru,
yes.
MP Laikipia West.
Good, thank you very much. I think we shouldn't be discussing whose business it is. Is it the business of Jubilee people, the businesses of NASA people? There is no business of NASA people or Jubilee people. It is the business of Kenyans. Kenyans who are waking up every morning to go toil and work very hard for their children. The Mama Boga who is sitting by the roadside, who is working so hard to feed their children. All we are saying, when the NASA mounts their demonstrations today, please respect that woman who wakes up very early in the morning and wants to sell their things so that they can feed their children. And there is no confrontation. I mean, let us be clear. This country belongs to all of us. There is no country of NASA or Jubilee. This country belongs to all of us. And let us agree on the centrality of Parliament to address some of the issues that have been raised because of the situation we are in. And NASA, let the text, the proposed changes come. I'm sure there can be a bipartisan approach to these registrations, especially when they come to Parliament, because those changes are not Jubilee changes. They are changes that are meant to address some issues that have been raised by the Supreme, and also by the situation. But also ourselves as leaders. You know, yesterday there were demonstrations in quite a number of parts of this country, this region, especially because of one member of Parliament who goes to a public function and utters words that are unacceptable. I mean, let us also appreciate we are also responsible people. A member of Parliament standing somewhere and saying certain things that cause some bit of tension, I think that is completely unacceptable. Let us not raise ourselves, lower ourselves to levels that really don't portray ourselves as the leaders. Okay. Because this country belongs to all of us. But somehow, I don't think there is a crisis in this country, by the way. I don't think there will be a crisis,
no,
actually. There will be no crisis on the 26th of October. Okay. In fact, we are saying NASA have their 7 irreducible minimum. By the way, Jubilee also have their irreducible minimum. And the irreducible minimum have Kenyans vote their president on 26th of October. Okay. Full stop. That is the irreducible minimum.
Thank you. Finally, Senator Leda Molekina.
I just want to remind us, and also particularly the police force, that Article 224 of the Constitution demands that the police force has to protect human rights. It is also has got to guarantee, and it's got to be neutral. It has got to do its work. So I want to remind the IG of the police that now you've got to be completely neutral. I know you're serving under the Jubilee administration, but you've got to be neutral. What you need to do is to provide NASA with enough security for them to exercise their democratic right. Number 2, which is very, very important, I want to appeal to the Jubilee side that this is not the time for us to come up with these laws. Remember very well, when we got our first constitution, immediately it was mutilated, changed overnight. You know, in fact, those actions are similar to the actions that we are seeing being demonstrated by the Jubilee side. In fact, when you think about the colonial period and you think about this time, the actions being taken by the Jubilee administration makes those actions taken by the colonial masters, they're making them look more like philanthropists. So I think for now, for the benefit of this country, we need to be sober. We have a country to run. We have an election to be able to carry out. I appeal to IEBC to meet these two individuals, you know, we can stay aside.
Okay.
You know, all parties can stay aside. Let Chebukati meet these two individuals, come up with an agreement that will be able to satisfy the desires of every citizen in this country.
Thank you so much, Senator Ledama Olekina from Narok County, Beatrice Adagala, Woman Representative Vihiga County, Opio Wandai, Ugunja MP, Patrick Mariru, Laikipia West MP, and Isaac Moora, nominated Senator, my panelists for this news review this morning. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Well, remember, Man Cave is coming up. Joy Mudengi discussing cheating and confessing. Very interesting discussion there. My name is Fred Indimule. Good morning.